It started like a distant whisper, the kind of rumor that surfaces every off-season and disappears before anyone pays attention. But this one refused to fade. Instead, it grew louder, sharper, and more impossible to ignore. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the face of the Milwaukee Bucks, the unstoppable force in jersey number 34, had reportedly asked out. And for the first time in years, the Golden State Warriors were not just monitoring the situation, they were in the middle of it. NBA insiders began pointing to something that once felt unthinkable. A potential blockbuster deal sending Giannis to San Francisco to team up with Stephen Curry. A partnership so explosive, so historically loaded, that even rival executives admitted privately it could reset the balance of the league. The idea alone sent shockwaves across social media, talk shows, and front office meeting rooms. Curry and Giannis in the same uniform? It sounded like a fantasy. But the circumstances in Milwaukee were changing fast, and the Warriors sensed a rare opening. Before we continue, if you are fascinated by high-level NBA moves, if you love the tension behind superstar trades, then make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling us whether you think this deal should happen. Trust me, what comes next is something you do not want to miss. As the rumor gained strength, analysts revisited the missed opportunity from years ago, when the Warriors showed interest in Giannis but the deal never materialized. Back then, the Greek superstar made it clear he wanted to stay in Milwaukee. He wanted to finish what he started. But after seasons of rising internal pressure, inconsistent roster moves, and the team struggled to remain a true contender, the inevitable seemed to finally be happening. The cracks were showing and the Warriors were ready. Clutch Points reignited the fire by outlining the trade package Golden State would need to offer. Jonathan Kuminga, Moody, and Brandin Podziemski, three young high-upside players already circulating in trade rumors throughout the league. Kuminga's athleticism, Moody's two-way presence, and Podziemski's playmaking made them ideal rebuilding pieces. But even with all three included, insiders agreed it would not be enough. Giannis is not the kind of player you acquire with potential alone. So the Warriors would need to go further, much further. That meant parting with at least one established star. And according to early speculation, two names stood out, Draymond Green or Jimmy Butler. The consensus pointed toward Green. His defensive IQ, championship pedigree, and leadership would be invaluable for Milwaukee's reconstruction. And for Golden State, as difficult as it would be to let go of the internal heartbeat of their dynasty, the addition of Giannis could justify almost any sacrifice. Milwaukee, on the other hand, would gain something it desperately lacked, a foundation for the future. The franchise had already lost its first-round picks from 2026 to 2030 due to previous deals with New Orleans and Portland. Recovering assets was not just desirable, it was necessary. A package of three young players, multiple draft selections, and a veteran leader like Green could give them a clear direction for the first time since the Giannis era began. From Golden State's perspective, the move would be risky, expensive, and emotionally heavy. Green was still one of the league's best defenders. But Giannis offered something even rarer, a player capable of anchoring both ends of the floor at an MVP level, a player who could form a once-in-a-generation trio alongside Curry and Butler. A trio strong enough to challenge the Nuggets, the Thunder, and the Lakers head-on. And for Giannis himself, the Warriors represented something he had been quietly missing. A place where he could compete for championships immediately, surrounded by stars who shared his intensity, his hunger, and his drive. But this was only the beginning. The real battle, the one that would test the Warriors' identity, Milwaukee's future, and Giannis's legacy, was just starting to unfold. The rumors had reached the team long before the media published them. But hearing whispers is one thing, feeling the consequences is another entirely. The moment the Warriors returned from practice, the atmosphere was unlike anything they had experienced all season. The air felt thick, almost metallic, as if the walls themselves understood that everything the franchise stood for might be about to change. Players walked into the locker room without the usual banter or post-practice laughter. Conversations that normally echoed through the hallway were replaced by soft murmurs and tense glances. Everyone already knew the truth. The front office was seriously considering a move for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the cost of that move involved one of their own. Stephen Curry sat at his locker, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, deep in thought. He had been through the highs and lows of the franchise, the rebuilds, the dynasties, the heartbreaks, and the championships. But this situation was different. Trading for a superstar wasn't new to him, but trading away part of the team's identity was. Draymond Green wasn't just a teammate. He was the soul of the roster, the defensive architect, the emotional engine that made Golden State more than just a collection of talent. Some players feared that a move this big could fracture the chemistry that had defined their greatness. Nearby, Jimmy Butler paced slowly, his jaw tight. Despite being one of the newer members of the team, he had already formed a deep bond with the roster, especially with Curry. Butler understood the business side of basketball better than most, but he also understood loyalty. He knew the front office was willing to include him or Green in the negotiations. And even though he wouldn't say it out loud, the uncertainty gnawed at him. The players could read it in his eyes. Klay Thompson, quiet but observant, leaned against a locker and watched the room unravel. He had seen eras shift, teammates come and go, and dynasties crumble under the weight of decisions made in conference rooms far away from the court. But this time the stakes were higher. This wasn't about a role player, a bench piece, or an aging veteran. This was about the potential end of a core that had built a legacy. And he knew the younger players felt it too. Jonathan Kuminga sat in silence, staring at the floor. He had worked tirelessly to become a crucial piece of the Warriors' rotation, but now he was a trade chip, one of the centerpieces of the package Milwaukee would demand. Moody and Brandin Podziemski felt the same weight. Being wanted by another franchise wasn't the problem. Being expendable to your own, that was where the pain lived. The coaching staff entered quietly, with Steve Kerr leading the way. His face carried the burden of someone forced to balance basketball with human emotion. He clapped his hands once, firm, deliberate, almost ceremonial. "Listen up," Kerr began, scanning the room slowly. "You've all seen the reports. You've heard the noise. But until anything is confirmed, you play your game. You prepare. You stay locked in." But the players weren't looking for a pep talk. They wanted clarity, something he couldn't give. Kerr continued, more softly. "I know this is difficult. I know it affects every one of you. But I need you to remember who we are. We've survived chaos before. And no matter what happens next, we do this together." A long silence followed, one heavy with unspoken fear. Everyone knew the truth. A trade for Giannis would not wait for the team's feelings. It would hit fast, decisive, and unforgiving. And one of the core members sitting in that room would be gone. Curry finally broke the silence. "Whatever happens," he said, "we don't lose who we are." But even as he spoke the words, everyone understood that the next few days could redefine everything. Their identity, their chemistry, their future, and the legacy of the franchise. And somewhere in Milwaukee, Giannis Antetokounmpo was watching closely, knowing his decision had already sent a shockwave through the heart of Golden State.